Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're going to talk about how modern engineering consultancy really can change lives by creating sustainable infrastructure that focuses relentlessly on delivering creative, value-led solutions for the benefit of people, places and, of course, the planet. I'm deliberately quoting there from the values page of engineering design firm Buro Happold in honour of the fact that my guest today is Paula Gough, the newly installed UK Development Director for Infrastructure, responsible for bringing, as she puts it, some exciting new thinking into UK infrastructure market. It's quite a challenge. Given the scale of infrastructure ambitions set out by the Chancellor in last month's budget and the unbelievably tight financial, social and environmental constraints that come with this ambition for growth, we will need every ounce of new thinking to make it all stack up. But of course, Buro Happold is synonymous for innovative thinking around difficult problems. From the moment the extraordinarily gifted engineer Ted Happold left his successful career at Arup in 1976. Legend has it he headed to the University of Bath to become Professor of Architecture and Engineering Design and then founded Buro Happold after Arup refused to allow him to start an office in Bath. Well, did that happen? I don't know. The firm remains a forward-thinking, design and people-focused business today, famous for tackling some of the globe's trickiest engineering projects and for doing so with a focus and attention on driving the absolute best community, environmental and economic outcomes, which is why Paula's new role caught my attention. Now, I first interviewed a very young and ambitious Paula Farsham, as she was then, for NCE back in 2007, when she was just starting her glittering career as Hyder Consulting's Graduate of the Year. She was certainly bent on creating change back then. So a few decades on, and with this new role, how can she help a firm like Buro Happold drill deep into this world of infrastructure and rethink our approach and deliver those vital creative solutions to our global challenges? Well, let's find out. Paula, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm really delighted to be here today.
Well, Paula, it's been a while since that NCE interview. Back then you said that you chose civil engineering because you wanted a career in which you wouldn't be bored. Have you succeeded?
Oh, absolutely. I've loved every minute of it. And I think a lot of what I do, including some of the diversity stuff that I do, is 100% fueled by how much I've enjoyed being a civil engineer and working in civil engineering as a whole. Well,
I'm sure we'll get on to all of that. But back today, I mentioned Ted Happold, the founder of Buro Happold, a truly big thinker and a design and engineering inspiration across the disciplines that make up our infrastructure world. You joined the Happold fold 8 months ago. What's your first impression in terms of the firm's approach to problem solving?
Well, I'm really delighted that you're starting this conversation with Sir Ted, because he was a really, truly passionate ideas man. And I think he was a pioneer. He was a bit of an inventor of ideas and someone that not only continually challenged the status quo and pushed at the boundaries, but importantly, he was quite articulate. He lobbied. He really tried to make changes at industry level. He and several of my colleagues today credibly demonstrate how alternative design thinking can really solve complex problems and bring things forward in a faster, greener and better manner. That I really value innovation and ideas. I think it's the solution to most of our sort of current modern societal challenges, and it's where we need the investment to do more with less, as we've seen from the new government recently.
Well, quite. I mean, as I pointed out, big challenges and opportunities that were laid out by the Chancellor in the budget in terms of infrastructure's ability to drive growth. And having worked in and around infrastructure for over 20 years, seeing many political ups and downs, promises and aspirations. How do you see this government's plan for a £40 billion infrastructure investment? Is it credible?
So the budget. So of course we've seen the first phase of what will be this new Labour government's budget. The second phase will hopefully come with a bit more detail and direction in the spring. I do hope that they engage a bit more with industry and academia to inject some fresh new ideas. I must admit that the badge the government has given the budget as a fix the foundations of our economy feels a little bit focused on blame. I would have really liked to have seen, here is what we're going to do different rather than here is what we're going to have to fix going forward. And I think there are some great deal of ideas and answers to that from industry. So that's why I'm saying I'd like to see that engagement for the next phase. I did actually read through the full document. I do think they need to put a page limit on it. It was absolutely huge, but it was rather also transactional. And as somebody that has been working in infrastructure, there wasn't a great deal of surprises for me or anything that I was tremendously excited by. But I was pleased that the key schemes that we're 100% waiting for, such as the Transpennine scheme or the East-West Rail, the HS2 to Euston, they were all reaffirmed. And as a highways person, though, I was very disappointed to lose 5 major schemes from the highways pipeline, including the A1 Morpeth to Ellingham, which I worked with the passionate teams on when I was at Costain. And I must admit, the amount of effort that goes into these schemes that effectively gets then shelved is wasteful. And I do think we can have a much better way of doing things in future that doesn't impact our communities. The cancellation of Taunton to Southfield scheme was another one that I feel impacted our communities in the southwest of England. They already suffered the cancellation of the Stonehenge scheme, the A303. So I think that thought for communities and that thought for impact is coming in a bit too late. So I'm excited about a new way of doing things, but planning, early engagement, and assessment of impact is something we've got to do differently in the new era of infrastructure delivery.
Well, certainly there'll be a lot more detail in the spring, but you do talk about fresh thinking. You talk about bringing new thinking to the sector. So what do you mean by that? Is this new ways of actually delivering to actually get more bang for every public pound that's spent? What do you mean by new thinking?
So I mean, in particular, setting ourselves up to do things differently. So I think innovation can really bring forward new approaches. We can use technologies such as AI. We can derive insight from data, which we are doing for our other clients, and be much more efficient and achieve that 30% efficiency that public sector's looking for. There's been a lot of red tape on procurement. So what I would like to see is that opening up a wider pool of SMEs, wider pool of tech starters coming into the sector to really drive that innovation. And in that way, it doesn't matter that we have a slightly lesser investment in transport. We can achieve the same things for less money, if you like, by just driving productivity to a new level.
Yeah, I suppose focusing on those outcomes, because of course the firm talks about being passionate, innovative, collaborative, and you've done a huge amount of work around early integration and collaboration. Do you think that the sector is actually becoming better at delivering solutions, as Buro Happold puts it, for people, for place, and for the planet?
I think there are some really good pockets of practice. Lots of good initiatives, but I must admit sometimes we still get the basics wrong, and we're not really harnessing technology, AI, that understanding of what the data tells us. And there's a lot of waste in the system. There's outdated standards that we need to do away with to bring that carbon reduction, to bring that better integrated mobility solutions into the sector. And I don't think we're harnessing all of that. I think we've got a lot more collaborative working to champion. And I think there is a huge amount of low-hanging fruit that we can grab to deliver better outcomes.
Yeah. In your new role, though, of course, you are part of the city's infrastructure leadership team, and cities in many ways are at the epicenter of the drive towards solutions for people, places and planet. I mean, your background has been in road and rail infrastructure. I mean, how challenging, therefore, is this new role in terms of rethinking that approach to infrastructure and placing those people and the needs of communities at the heart of that investment?
Well, I really like the link between cities and infrastructure. I think that they make each other work. So here at Buro Happold, we have a very thriving development infrastructure team. They're really well versed at how to look at different stakeholder requirements and how to work with each of them to really understand the outcomes that we're seeking. There is a people are used to complexity. That means that they're very good at spotting issues early on and engaging to resolve them, so that designs are only progressed further when they've reached that level of maturity that actually, yes, this is in tune with stakeholder requirements, this is in tune with carbon reduction requirements. And more importantly, which is something I love about how BH do things, is we think about livable places and how what we provide as infrastructure or housing or developments integrates into the communities and impacts people's lives. And I think that is the missing ingredient for infrastructure. And I think if we can apply and direct what we know here to the infrastructure sector fully, there are going to be some very positive outcomes for us.
Yeah, no, well, I'd say that does sort of speak to this whole notion of actually making sure that infrastructure is for the people rather than being done to them. And I think that's an important thing that perhaps the industry maybe forgets too often. Let's talk a bit more about you, Paula. You started your career at Arup as a civil and structural engineer and got involved in projects such as the Dublin Spire following your studies at University of Surrey. But as we discussed in the NCE interview that I referenced back in 2007, you were commended for your entry into a Science, Engineering and Technology Awards and selected as one of only 4 undergraduate projects to present your ideas to MPs and industry professionals. How did that kind of give you a springboard into your career?
Gosh, without aging myself, Anthony, you are taking me back some time. But I absolutely loved my time at the University of Surrey. It was an excellent university to study civil engineering, and in particular my latter years where I did that piece of dissertation work, which was award-winning and very successful. I spent lots of happy hours making cubes of high-volume PFA and GGBS concrete in our concrete technology lab with then my research partner, now my husband. We were making, crushing and testing cubes, and I was delighted when the project was selected to go into the SET Awards at the Parliament. I felt like, here we go, it's all starting, it's kicking off. So, but sadly, 20 years on, we haven't actually made sufficient strides in decarbonising concrete as a key significant construction material. I think it's really important that we really home in on what is low-hanging fruit, what's available, what's the scalability of that in particular. So if HS2 decides to use the whole of GGBS, then we're not stuck. These are things that I learned and I developed a deep interest in in civil engineering as a result of doing that project, really. Which continues today.
Maybe you can go back and continue that work now as a side project. But you left Arup to join Kia for some site experience for a year before you headed off to the Haider Group to cut your engineering teeth on major global infrastructure projects such as the Dubai Metro and the Hong Kong MTRC extension. And we hear so often about the career-defining nature of global projects. Was that the case for you? You go abroad and really find out what engineering is about.
Yeah, I absolutely love that variety that I had in my early days of my career. I think I chose civil engineering because it gives you that option to travel and apply yourself anywhere in the world. I went to Hong Kong, I went to Dubai, I also went to Australia and Ireland. I worked on railway stations, pumping stations, dam, metros, you name it. But I think the biggest learning that I actually achieved from that global travel and working with lots of different cultures was exactly that culture and behavior has a huge impact on outcome. And actually diverse teams and working in these multi-cultural organizations enables us to really bring forward good outcomes. And the leadership of that in particular is incredibly important to direct it and bring out the best in everybody. So I think my EQ levels soared after experiencing all of that. I think my anchor projects, the defining projects, as you name it, came later on. But I think that incredible cultural exposure to how to work with lots of different companies from different countries was an incredible learning, which today I cherish it and I think back to it.
Yeah. Well, of course, Hyder was then bought by Arcadis in 2014, and you started a 9-year career driving the firm's rail then highway infrastructure consultancy business. And you list, one of your skills as attention to detail. And I imagine that in the tight margin highway business, that is crucial. I mean, is that correct? Is that still something that sticks with you? Attention to detail?
Yes, I think I'm not a detailed person as such, but I think detail is due attention where it's important, and I'm good at identifying where that needs to sort of be looked at and looking at it. Now, during the time that I was in road and rail with Arcadis, I went on site. I worked on the London Bridge Station redevelopment project, and I was in a project management role. However, it was very clear that we needed to look at the detail of a program and the blockages and the issues that we were facing to be able to make the key dates happen. For example, I remember walking under the London dungeon arches, trying to work out how on earth we were going to pile underneath them. And we had to work with a US concrete provider to find some slow setting material so that using the tiny piling machines that we were taking underneath the dungeons, we were able to then use this slow setting concrete to actually achieve the piling process. It was really interesting, it was that level of detail that enabled us to achieve the program. So yes, I think everybody needs to give due attention to detail to be able to meet those outcomes that we seek, but certainly have that umbrella view as well as to what needs attention to be able to reach the outcomes.
Well, it certainly worked for you. You then headed off after 16 years with Hyder and Arcadis. And I think you also had a career break in there where you had some maternity leave, had a couple of daughters. But you joined Costain running their national highways business, and after 2 years then joined Buro Happold as Director of Infrastructure earlier this year. So why the move back into consulting now?
So I was inspired by my time on London Bridge Station redevelopment, which of course was delivered by Costain. I always thought that at some point where my family commitments allow, I would go back into contracting and experience that contracting. I could see a lot of problems in collaboration between the design and the construction world. And I also wanted to understand the more complex and risk-ridden business model of a contractor. And I was put bang in the middle of all of that. And I absolutely cherished the time that I had with Costain. My learning curve was incredibly steep and very, very interesting. And I think as a result, makes me a much better consultant in the design space. I wanted to come back to the design space because A, from a cultural perspective, is much more aligned to how I work. B, I think I did what I needed to do to understand the contracting challenges, and now I can take them into the design world and really look at them from a designer's perspective with a view to avoiding them. And I think at BH, the examples I see are very good. Again, comes from that attention to detail, comes from that understanding of only progress designs if it's mature enough, not simply to hit dates. And I'm really excited to build on the acumen that BH has in this space and apply that to infrastructure on the consult side where I feel I belong. Okay.
Well, you have had a very busy career to date. What do you get up to when you're not at work then, Paula? I mean, do you still enjoy an evening at the comedy club and a sushi bento box with tuna for lunch? I'm quoting there from your interview in 2007, obviously.
I certainly do. I do lead a very busy work and family life, so sadly not a lot of time for comedy clubs, but I do find lots of joy in just simple pleasures like walking my dog in early mornings or going and watching my daughters play hockey and the joy that I see in their faces when they get it right. And I also read as much as I can and reread some of my favorite sort of Bibles and listen to my favorite podcasts, of course.
That's good to hear.
And I also love traveling. Traveling is the thing that I guess I look forward to. That is in my diary. I'm a bit boring. I love Europe, but I think there is a lot there to achieve, and hopefully my husband and I are planning to retire to Italy at some point, a country we love. They are the things I look forward to.
Well, you also spend quite a lot of time boosting diversity, or trying to help boost diversity in the sector, because while you were at Arcadis, you became, and you still are, a trustee of SATRO, a charity inspiring young people into science, technology and engineering and mathematics. I mean, what does this charity get up to, and what's its unique angle on this challenging issue?
SATRO is an amazing charity, and thank you for mentioning them, because they've been going on for 30 years. They operate on a shoestring, and they deliver a huge impact on what is very small amount of budget that they do manage to get from both government and private investors. I joined because I love what I do, and I genuinely have an interest in the civil engineering profession, and I want to see more women and much more diverse set of individuals. And whenever I've been to schools and spoken to girls, they sadly don't consider the profession at all, and they seem to, if they're good at maths and physics, they seem to be thinking about accounting and working for management consultants. So what SATRO does is inspires and really raises the expectations and awareness of children from every single background. And it helps them around qualifications, employability, and the availability of what they can do. And so I'm tremendously proud to be a trustee there, and their impact is truly moving. I highly encourage your listeners to have a look at what SATRO do. But I think the skills crisis we're facing in the construction industry needs the charity sector engagement for us to be able to achieve the future skills we need to overcome the challenges.
Well, I'll put a link in the show notes to make sure people do know how to get hold of the charity there. So leave that with me.
Thank you.
You've been described as a passionate advocate for equality, diversity and inclusion. You are a D&I and fairness, inclusion and respect ambassador. I mean, how does that work you do drive towards this ultimate goal, I suppose, of value-led solutions for the benefit of people, places and planet?
So, firstly, it's worth saying that we've been talking about EDI a lot in infrastructure and civil engineering, but I'm sad to say that the progress has actually been quite slow. There's been a flurry of initiatives. There's been KPIs put on supply chain. There's been targets, quotas, you name it. We've targeted it. But actually, they haven't really manifested themselves in a real change. In fact, there is less a number of girls doing a civil engineering degree than there was when I started doing it. So we need a new chapter on how we create positive action for equality, diversity and inclusion. And it's really important that we do that. And there is sufficient research out there that shows that diverse and inclusive organizations are more successful, more creative, stay relevant for longer. And so we've done the convincing. We now need that positive action, really.
Buro Happold is fiercely committed to diverse thinking as well. I mean, certainly, it's, since the firm was founded by Ted Happold, one of the firm's value states that, we're a diverse one firm culture. When we get it right, it sings. But another value that Happold also has is to embrace mutual responsibility. It says it's easy to default to individual successes. Teams need to share success and failure in the same way. Yeah. I mean, how would you say that whole ethos helps us to deliver better infrastructure? You've mentioned collaboration and the need for it, but is it really around that kind of mutual responsibility that we're really not getting enough?
Don't you just love that when we get it right, it sings? And I must admit, and since arriving here, I have seen singing going on, metaphorically, have seen the orchestration of it, if you like. I think the best teams are those that are purpose-driven, and the individuals within those teams understand their contribution and accountability. We're quite lean here at Buro Happold, so people have that clarity of why they're here and how they are contributing. But at the same time, we have a lot of co-location of our multidisciplinary engineers, and people come together and they hear each other out. I've witnessed people in our bridge team standing at somebody's computer and discussing a particular concept, and then they go away over there and start talking in Italian, Greek, Arabic, or whatever else. And funnily enough, the way that it's done, things are absorbed in different ways, in different languages, and then out pops a new idea, and magic does happen, and it really does sing. So we need to embrace individual accountability, collaborative team working, differentiation in thinking, and that they are the key ingredients to success and finding new ideas to overcome the challenges ahead.
Okay, but I know that you and also Buro Happold are also passionate about using infrastructure to create a sustainable future. Is a net zero infrastructure future really possible?
Sure, it's possible. I think we need a mix of societal behaviour, better policy making from government. I was really pleased to see the budget investment in NSIPs for the future to shed light on better planning there.
That's a nationally significant infrastructure project.
That's right, yes. And innovation and ideas. So I read this amazing book, which I'd again like to suggest to your viewers, called Growth, A Reckoning, by a chap called a professor called Daniel Susskind. And I must admit, I am not an economist, but I was moved and incredibly inspired by this book. It's about how ideas, innovation and differentiation actually can support economic growth, and infrastructure investment in itself isn't going to be supporting economic growth. So for us to really think about net zero infrastructure, we need to invest in idea generation and innovation and use that as a catalyst for achieving our outcomes and achieving healthy new growth in our economy going forward.
Yeah. Which of course, and I'll make reference to that book, of course, as well. But one of the other things that Buro Happold's values state is that you're more than just a business. You care about the legacy of your work. We have a responsibility of care as an employer and influencer in shaping the world. How do infrastructure professionals, I suppose, advocate, for instance, for doing nothing?
I think that do nothing is really important. I think it used to be that infrastructure sector thought, do nothing could be sort of counterintuitive. And still today we see some sort of unethical, I would say, and unevolved organizations making such recommendations. But I think if you want to stay relevant and credible, given the climate emergency, given the depleting natural resources we've got, do nothing is absolute a firm option as far as Buro Happold is concerned, because it will direct the doing elsewhere where it matters, where it keeps us relevant as organizations providing services, and where value is delivered so that clients will keep investing in them. And I think if people are not recognizing that, then they are left behind and they will be obsolete very soon.
Well, of course, you and Buro Happold are certainly committed to, as you put it, working towards an equitable and green recovery, adapting your business to mitigate climate change and the biodiversity crisis. So how do you approach that? I suppose, how do you approach it in infrastructure sector, which by its very nature can be quite environmentally challenging?
Yeah, I think Buro Happold in the current sectors that we are hugely active in are sort of way ahead of where they need to be. I think we're currently implementing the PAS 2080 certification for carbon management and reporting actively on our ESG strategy, which every good company will be doing now. But in terms of sort of reducing our own operational carbon. I was impressed to hear that our beautiful new London office, which I'm sat in today, was designed by our people. Very stringent targets in terms of high sustainability targets was put on it, on its fit out. Groundbreaking reduction in some of the embodied carbon for the building, and it has achieved BREEAM Outstanding and the LEED certification at platinum level. That is the sort of level of effort that goes into our own internal operations. We also, I mentioned about generation of organic computer programs to help us achieve what we want. We look at something called multi-criteria assessment for carbon reduction in design and systemically build active actions into how we reduce carbon, and have created something called a program that's called Urban Sea Lab, and through that we direct invest into ideas, big issues that the built environment has, to create disruptive solutions. And I've not seen this elsewhere, and having come from Costain, which was quite innovation focused also, I'm now seeing actually the power of what can be done, and then the challenge here is accelerating all of this into industry to create some really good examples.
Well, there's no question that technology certainly has a huge place to really drive for better designs, better outcomes, more sustainable outcomes. Which I suppose begs the question, we hear a lot about AI, but we also hear a lot about the new human skills that are required. Are we looking in the right places to surround yourself at Buro Happold with the right people that are going to drive forward that technology solution for the future?
I think the wider pool of search that we have, the better. We can always look wider. But for me, it's not about where we look. It's more about how we look, what skills we look for, having that sort of recruitment strategy that enables people from every single background to think about your job advert, whether it's making it part-time, whether it's making it flexible, whether it's making it sort of the language of it appealing to different types of people. I think that's what we need to fine tune, and then I think we can reap the positive results of technologies like AI and still have good skills and that complexity that only humans can unpick.
Well, certainly interesting, really challenging times ahead, Paula, but just to round out, you say that it takes courage to create, as you say, a culture that fosters a dynamic between technology and empathy to gain deeper insight, unleash imagination and manage risk. How does your courage manifest itself in your new role then?
That's an excellent question. I love the fact that you're talking about courage. I guess it takes courage to be the new kid on the block. We are the new kid on the infrastructure block. I'm being courageous in sort of believing in our the power of value and the sort of the taking risks that we are currently taking to really achieve this good quality growth in our business and apply our acumen to this new sector. And I'll continue to be courageous in sort of speaking up and advocating for this change in infrastructure, as many that know me know that I will sort of share. And I think this courage to champion new ideas will bring great benefits to the new sectors that we seek to operate in.
Well, it's clearly, Paul, underpinned by a huge amount of passion and a huge amount of knowledge and experience from your several decades in the industry. So thanks so much for joining me on the Infrastructure Podcast to really explain what your challenges are. Good luck with it all, but it's certainly an interesting and very challenging time ahead.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Good to see you again and hope to chat to you again soon. Thanks for having me.
No, look forward to sharing that bento box for lunch at some point. But
that would be great.
Well, that's all we've got time for today, but we do have more from the Infrastructure Podcast in the pipeline and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information to some of the issues we talked about. I'll certainly put some of those links in that Paula mentioned, but you'll also find the latest podcast to listen to and to share. So thanks for joining us, and thanks again to Paula. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.